what was your view of the day's events overall today, starting with the men's race and Darrell's win?
Well, I thought Darrell's performance was pretty good in the circumstances. I knew he wasn't at his best. It was obviously difficult conditions. You've heard lots of people talk about the windy weather. So it was a good win on his part. I'm sure he was relieved to have stayed ahead of me. We had a similar tough race a week ago at Basingstoke, over 10 miles, where the gap was similar. He edged out a little bit more today. I was relieved to stay ahead of Phil King, who's a bit of a rising star, but I know he was gutted to be beaten by me for a second time in a week, but I was pleasantly surprised to hear how well the Irish girls did in the women's 10k. Deirdre Gallagher, doing a sub 46 in those conditions was, I think, a brilliant performance. And Gillian, I think, was only less than a minute outside her personal best with a 48:20 odd performance. I think that was great. And of course, this afternoon I went down and enjoyed watching the men's half marathon, and of course the ladies doing the same. And that was a good way for me to unwind from my morning. I mean, I particularly felt disappointed for Darrell not going to the Olympics. I would have really liked him to have been there with me as a teammate, but first and foremost as a friend. I really think he deserved to go. He'd done a number of good performances. I hope that he'll make Athens this year, and maybe I'll be there with him. We'll see.
I think that lap running isn't so common with running races. Is it because of the requirement for judging in walking that we have such short laps in walking on a regular basis, but it's unusual for running?
Well, obviously with the walking races, yeah, sure, we need the multi-lap circuits, and I think it's something which the walkers really do get used to. It's a psychology thing, But for many years I've believed that if runners could get it into their heads that competing on multi-lap circuits are not a bad thing, and think about it positively, potentially they could get some superb performances. I find it ironic that marathon runners and maybe half marathoners like today will readily do 10k on the track, 25 laps.
I know you had great fun this afternoon encouraging everyone, and one person in particular spoke to you afterwards, I believe. Errol Watson.
Oh, yeah, Errol. I must admit, it's the first time that I've seen many of the runners today, but it did bring a wry smile to my face when I tried to give as much encouragement to everyone in the race, and I apologise to anyone that I might have missed out. Hopefully I didn't miss out anyone, but Errol was one of those guys that I gave encouragement to, and at the end of the race he came up to me and particularly thanked me, as a number of people did, which was fine. There's no need for it, but it was great. And then just as a parting shot, he grabbed me by the arm and just said, "Who are you?"
I often pull your leg about the feature in Athletics Weekly back in 1980 when you said that you would intend to compete in race walking either for 6 months or for 4 years, and I think what you were trying to say is that your aim was to get to the Olympics. You were controversially omitted from the team in 1980, but since then you've competed in 4 Olympics at both the 20 and the 50 kilometre distance. What's been the highlight of your career?
To have travelled the world, competed in a lot of major championships, Commonwealth Games, World Championships, World Cups, and 4 Olympics. I guess the Los Angeles Olympics in '84 were very special because the Olympics was everything to me, and going to my first, at the time thinking it was probably going to be my only Olympics, was particularly special. I enjoyed things like, actually some of the my best performances have come in not necessarily the major championships, but things like the New York Marathon, for instance. That was in '89. I finished second in what was a recognised walk section and beat some of the best walkers in the world. I was only beaten by Carlos Mercenario of Mexico, and he edged me out by just over 2 minutes, but people behind me on that occasion were people like Andrei Perlov, the current and still world record holder for 50 kilometres, Bo Gustafsson, a top Swede who's been highly ranked in a lot of major championships, and a clutch of Italians, including Maurizio De Milano, who I think many people in the walking world would recognise as one of the all-time greats. I think if I was to pick out my favourite race, it's difficult, but I did take a lot of satisfaction from qualifying for my third Olympics by winning the Olympic trial at Lancaster in '92. I did that with an 83.5 minute 20k, only 6 days after recording an 82-minute 20k, and put in two 20ks back to back within 6 days, and that followed on the top of having suffered a lot 3 weeks previous by winning the national 50k in a relatively slow 4:13, but I suffered a lot in that. So I strung together a clutch of good races in '92, culminating in winning that Olympic trial. I got amazing satisfaction from doing that. A lot of good memories, but I'm still somewhat frustrated when I look back on my career.
Well, four Olympics, and you've competed a lot longer than you said that you expected to. Why carry on? Why don't you retire now? You've presumably got your name in the Guinness Book of Records. What keeps you going? I
guess it's difficult, really, especially since the Atlanta Olympics. I've had to think about this long and hard, and I kind of drifted back into training. I heard at the end of last year that I was pre-selected for this year's World Cup, which is in Poděbrady in the Czech Republic. So that gave me another major championship to aim for. So that's given me, obviously, an incentive to go on another major. That would be my 7th World Cup.
Looking back slightly, the period I remember controversially you weren't selected for the British team in 1985 when it was held on the Isle of Man. I would suggest that it's easier to get into the British team than it was back in that period. We weren't happy with the performances in the early 80s, but do you think some of your contemporaries, the Les Mortons and the Ian McCombeys and so on, were underrated at the time?
Without question, yeah. During the period, I think from the mid-80s to the late 80s, and maybe stretching into the early 90s, I think there were some fabulous performers, guys with a lot of talent, and that if the British Athletic Federation, maybe the general public, I'm sure friends recognise that those guys had talent. People like myself, Les Morton, Ian McCombie, Paul Blagg, Andy Drake, Martin Rush, who ran today, and of course now we've got Darryl Stone and, as I said, Phil King. These kind of guys, and then one or two others that I could think of. If we'd had just a little bit of support, we could have bridged the gap between being good international performers and top major games athletes. I firmly believe I could have challenged near the top.